Hi, well, I think we are live. Yes, I think we are live. Um, so if you're on, please say hi. Jump in, say hello, give me an opportunity to say hi back, and give me a thumbs up or a heart, or even better than a thumbs up is a heart or an emoji or something like that. And we can start this Facebook Live. Hi, I see that there are some people watching. Please give me a hi or a thumbs up. Hi, Amy. Good. Lovely to see you. Thank you for coming in. And actually, you were one of the people that suggested that we do something with perfectionism. And that's exactly what we're doing, of course. Hi, Senga. Hi, Tim. Hi, Tracy. Good. Thank you very much for saying hi. Um, so this is called overcoming perfectionism. And I don't want to sort of wobble on too much before we get to the nitty gritty, but there are some interesting points that we need to make, and I'll make some kind of steps forward later on. So, I have worked, with hundreds upon hi Claire, with hundreds upon hundreds of people, and I'd almost say that everybody that comes to see me is a perfectionist to some degree. Hi Malcolm, hi Jenny, and I think that this indicates the extent to which perfectionism is actually a problem. Now, I'll talk a bit more about the benefits of perfectionism in that it does make you work hard. You can achieve success, and it feels like you're really putting effort into stuff. The trouble is, it very easily pitches across. It turns over into working too hard and not looking after yourself and having difficulty with relationships and time management and all sorts of things. So we're going to talk about this double-edged sword that is perfectionism. So in principle, let's define the problem. The problem is that things take too long, they take too much effort, and that ultimately causes stress and distress. Hi, Dave and Deb. So I think you can also lose confidence in yourself that you're doing a worthwhile job. And I think that when people are really perfectionist, it's very hard for them to know whether they're doing enough. It's very hard for them to judge. In which case, hi Kirsty. In which case, they often err on the side of doing too much because at least, well, you know, you can be fairly sure that that's too much. And now, perfectionism is like a strategy for doing things really, really well. The trouble is, you're kind of hostage. You're becoming a hostage. You're making your self-esteem a hostage to striving and achievement. So you're making your sense of personal value dependent upon what you do as opposed to who you are, which is actually what it should be. Now, I've got a definition of perfectionism, which I thought was useful because I think it's useful because it kind of puts a line in the sand and it tells us what we're dealing with. Hi, Dave. Perfectionism is the setting and striving to meet very demanding standards that are self imposed and relentlessly pursued despite this causing problems. It involves basing your self worth almost exclusively on how well those high standards are pursued and achieved. Now, if you've done any work with me, or if you've been in Anxiety Wizard, and if you've been in Anxiety Wizard Module 5 on and the element on perfectionism, you will know that I draw a line. And at one side, I put P, and at the other side, I put, what do I put at the other side? Anyone know? Does anyone know what I put at the other side when I draw a line and I put P at one side? What do I put at the other side? Anyone know? I'll give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3. Hi, Julie. 2, 1. Failure. Perfectionism is a faulty brain program, and basically there are only two places to be in this program. One is perfect, one is failure. Now, it starts off that for various reasons, and typically it's to bolster self-esteem and to make yourself feel good, but there can be some other reasons, such as feeling a bit like a fraud or not feeling good enough anyway, that you try to occupy the space around P. Now, I typically draw a box around P. I say you try to be in that box, right? And that's fine. That will make you more successful. And as you become more successful, the tasks that you have to do and the things that you have to manage become more complicated and more spread out, and it becomes harder and harder to occupy that space around P. There comes a point when somehow the switch flicks, and all of a sudden you realize you're not at P, but instead you're at F, that you feel like a failure. Now, has anyone experienced that flip where you're trying, you're doing your best, then all of a sudden you feel like you're failing? Has anyone experienced that? Anyone? Someone say yes, or give me an example. Hi, Alison. Well, I almost invariably would draw that picture with every client, and they'd almost invariably go, yes, I get it. And I would say, the reason we're speaking is because, thanks, Dave. The reason we're speaking is because you're in F. So it's likely to be the case that at some point in your life, you have bounced to F and you felt like you're failing. And it doesn't really matter what you do, it feels like you're failing. And the reason it persists in feeling like that, yes, it's horrible. Yes. Yes, work. Yep. No one said no yet. The reason it feels so horrible is because the strategy, the single strategy that you use to guarantee your success in life, and therefore that you feel good about yourself, has just collapsed. Being a perfectionist whilst still feeling like a failure is entirely pointless in a sense, right? But that tells you that it's not. This is the fundamental problem with this brain program of perfectionism. It doesn't matter what you do, eventually you will bounce to F. You will eventually feel like a failure. For Amy says, for me, it was when life became more complicated after I had my son. I couldn't be perfect, and work couldn't be P. So yeah, like when complexity is like a big one, because if things are complicated, it's much harder to be in P. And I swear that I've seen people who very, very senior, sort of managing director of global multinational companies, and things just get too complicated, too chaotic. There's just too much, and you don't know what's going on, that you just have to go from P to F. Anyway, there are three basic bits of perfectionism, and I want to just touch on them because you'll see why soon. The first one is that you're setting up demanding high standards for yourself, and then you're criticizing yourself for not meeting them. You're striving to meet these demanding standards despite the fact that they create stress, overwork, relationship problems, and they don't necessarily enable you to get all of your work done in a timely fashion. And you're basing your self-esteem on what you do, not who you are. And the problem with that, of course, is that you are who you are, and you only do what you do for a period of time in your life, and you'll move on to something else. So we all want to feel good about what we do, but we have to go about it differently. Now, here's the best thing: it is possible to start off as a perfectionist, but then work towards being flexible and adaptive and successful at what you do without having to use this really unhelpful strategy. Hi, Gillian, you just found me. Dave says, I was never at P, even though I tried all my life. My mom put me in F all my life. I was never good enough, and she put me in F by her actions and words from a young age. Okay, I mean that's a whole conversation about control, really, but we can have that another time, perhaps. Now, this is the interesting thing. Perfectionism is, I'm going to call it a brain program. It's bigger than that, but it's like a substantial process. But it's also implicated in lots of other things. For instance, OCD. You will never find a person who struggles with OCD who's not a perfectionist, who does not have very high standards and rigid rules, and an exaggerated sense of responsibility. Now, not all perfectionists have OCD, but in my experience, all OCD folks have perfectionist problems. Anxiety, perfectionism is anxiety, right? Have I done well? Have I performed well? Have I said the right thing? Have I done the right thing? it opens you up to negative self-evaluation and those worry questions. Eating disorders, perfectionism is almost always implicated in bulimia, with the very rigid rules, anorexia, very self-critical about body appearance, etc. And depression, of course. A lot of perfectionism is driven by a fear of failure. Now, I'm going to talk about procrastination in a minute, but it's driven by a fear of failure. Well, of course, depression is being in the F. If you spend enough time in the F end of perfectionism, you will feel like a failure because that's failure, right? It's not failure, but it feels like failure because there's only two places to be. And if you can't be perfect, then there has to be failure. It's a black and white way of thinking. Very, very common in depression. Not good, feeling not good enough. Now, what keeps perfectionism in place? Now, there are some things that you do, and we all do these kinds of things, right? These are not abnormal or unusual things, but there are some things that you do that keep perfectionism in place. And there's one, well, there are a few. So the first one is procrastination. Who procrastinates? Does anyone procrastinate? Give me a yes. Give me a thumbs up if you procrastinate. I was talking to someone the other day about procrastination, and it's such a pervasive thing, and you go, oh, yeah, I put stuff, yeah, I procrastinate. But I've known people procrastinate successfly. And I find often it's the cleverest people that procrastinate because they get away with it just because they're clever, But I once had a student who, when I was teaching counseling psychology at London Met, she got accepted to medical school, so she finished her MSc and then she went off to medical school. I said, look, you do know you're a procrastinator, right? And you might get away with it in psychology because there's not so much to learn, but you can never be a procrastinator in medical school. It's just too much to learn and you can't do it in the last minute. So I don't know how she went. I don't know how she did, but I hope she stopped being a procrastinator. Yes, Gillian. Yes, Dave. Yes, Jenny. Used to be terrible at it. Yeah, Tracy, Deirdre. Yeah. Okay. So, procrastination. Now, the way it works is this: your brain, if you've been watching my podcast, my broadcast for a little while, you know that your brain does everything behind the scenes. It pushes it into consciousness. You take ownership over it. So basically, your brain is running the whole show, and you just have this. There's a bit of you that you think of as conscious. So your brain makes predictions about events, and based upon the prediction, you do it. You don't do it, right? So with avoidance, your brain makes predictions about what might happen. So, for instance, I just wrote down a few common ones, right? I won't look good. So what do? You don't go. My house won't be clean. What do? You don't invite people. I might have gained weight. What do? You don't weigh yourself. I won't say the right thing. What do? You say nothing. I might blush. What do? You sit quiet. So there's a lot of things that we do. The brain makes a negative prediction, and of course, it just makes a negative prediction. We experience it. And then what do? We avoid stuff. Who avoids things? Can I have a yes or a thumbs up or a heart? Who can give me a heart? We avoid stuff. Now, the thing is, every psychological problem has elements of avoidance in it. But when you avoid stuff, you never give yourself the opportunity to learn that you could have done it anyway. Oh, I avoid public speaking because I don't know what to say. Well, have you worked out a speech? No. Well, of course you don't know what to say. You haven't worked out a speech, right? So we always make predictions, and we're always thank you, yeah, yes, thank you. We always make predictions, and then we avoid stuff. But we also check our performance. So, for instance, who compares themselves to others? Who compares themselves to others? Who seeks reassurance? Who tests themselves to see whether they're doing as well as other people? Yeah, I'm getting I'm getting a lot of yeses to all of these questions, right? Comparing ourselves to others, seeking reassurance, testing ourselves. The thing is, comparing ourselves to others, that's a heck of a one. I bet you never compare yourself to someone who is less able than yourself. Does anyone ever compare themselves to someone who is less able than themselves? We compare ourselves to people who are richer, better looking, taller, shorter, more attractive, more successful, whatever, right? More intelligent, live in a better house. We always compare ourselves to people who are doing better in that bit that we take for we consider to be important. And then we do safety behaviors. Now, we've talked about procrastination, we've talked about avoidance, we've talked about performance checking. Now we're doing safety behaviors. Everybody does safety behaviors. But the question is, do you do safety behaviors to the detriment of your life? I mean, I might do a safety behavior. I can't even think of one, but I might do a safety behavior. Do a safety behavior. Yeah, but it's not to the detriment of my life. So, sitting at the end of an aisle in a cinema in case you have a panic attack. Who does that? Who does that one? I've heard of sitting at the end of in a lecture theatre, knowing where the exits are, always having water with you in case you feel panicky. Anyone? These ring a bell for anyone? Don't eat spicy food in case your face goes red. Don't speak up in a meeting, or don't say anything in case you blush. Make lots of lists so you don't miss something, but then you've got so many lists you don't know what to do first. Being overly thorough. Oh, check it again, check it again, check it again, check it again. And then there's still an error. when I used to write academic papers, you do hundreds of versions of this academic paper. Anyway, a colleague of mine in Oxford, he did the paper, and he was a much more senior than me. He did the paper, and he's gone through all the things. It's been through editing, it's been through galley proofs, it's been through the whole thing. It came out. I opened it up. The first sentence had a spelling mistake in it. It had been checked and checked and checked, and still it had a spelling mistake in it. Tracy always got an exit plan. Gillian always unplugs everything at night, but we did have a house fire. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so safety behaviors. These prevent us from learning that we're resilient and strong and that we can actually cope and do things. Jenny checks the doors before going to bed about 3 times. Yeah. Well, the thing about that is, Jenny, you do not have confidence in your judgment because you have spent as much time not being confident in your judgment as being confident in your judgment, and so you can't decide when you do the balance inside your brain. You can't decide which one's true, so you check it until you're confident, until one feels stronger than the other. So I've said perfectionism, though, is not wholly bad. It's only bad when it becomes bad. Well, it's always inflexible, but it becomes bad. So working hard does bring rewards and success. But how do you know when you get to the point where you're working too hard? Well, I have a breakdown and I have to go off sick for 6 months. Too late. So how do you tell the difference, right? So this is like a critical point that we have to think about. Working hard, perfection does bring some rewards, particularly when you're younger and you're very resilient and you've got a lot of energy, and you can burn that energy that you have, your resilience, your life force. You can spend it to become successful. Perfectionism persists because you do base your self-evaluation on how hard you're working and how much you're achieving. You fear failure, you fear change, fear discovery, being found out. And it does give you a sense of control because you are actually doing something. You are taking control of something. The trouble is you're not taking control of what you think you're taking control over. Do you remember the 2 realities? External reality and internal reality. External reality, internal reality. When you check the door 3 times, Jenny, you think you're checking the door, but you're actually reassuring your internal reality that you're correct, because the door doesn't need to be checked. I mean, the door's locked, right? So it's a sense of false control. And if I know you've been through working through anxiety, was it, Jenny? You will know, you'll have come across false control as a sort of a trick of the brain. And being a very controlling person, being a perfectionist and a controlling person, because they go together. I don't mean controlling, I mean control freak. It does give you a sense of structure. So, it has some benefits. Now, so what we have is we have we have your self-worth overly dependent on striving and achievement. You're likely to be you'll have some rigid rules and some inflexible standards, and these standards will be very high. Now, you're also doing the black and white thinking thing, which is a cognitive bias, and you're also um, you know trying to be productive, and you're kind of monitoring yourself against other people in a sense. Okay. Now, if you meet your standards on any particular task, you're likely to go, "Oh, my standards are too low," and you'll you'll raise your standards, right? Okay. If you fail to meet your standards, you will then criticize yourself. You do something unproductive, counterproductive. If you had a problem with bulimia, you'd have a binge. But a lot of times it's just self-criticism, self-loathing, self-hatred, and whatnot, even self-punishment. And that's a perpetuating cycle, right? If you meet your standard, you recognize your standard's too low, and then you try to raise it. And if you fail to meet your standard, you punish yourself with self-criticism or even some other kind of flagellation. So the whole process is a really unhelpful kind of circuit. Now we have to break the circuit. Now I've given some thought to this, and I've been thinking about this all day, and I did think about doing a short course on overcoming perfectionism, but that's quite a lot of effort. And in fairness, I thought, instead of doing that, why don't I put a new module in Anxiety Wizard? So I'm going to put a new module in Anxiety Wizard called Overcoming Perfectionism. And I'll tell you why I'm going to do that, because having just developed this Facebook Live, there are a number of things that we need to do to really tackle perfectionism. And I made a list. So what I'm going to do over the next 2 or 3 weeks is to build this new module. I'll put the module in straight away, but I'm going to build these elements in. So we're going to have a progressive sort of homework process, so that we work through the things that we need to do so we can really tackle perfectionism. And I would gamble that if we really drive the perfectionism down, a lot of other areas will be so much easier. So this is what I'm going to put in the new Overcoming Perfectionism module in Anxiety Wizard. So we're going to decide specifically on what areas of your life this impacts on. Now, commonly it's work, but not always. It could be home, the structure of home, how your home is. It could be, friendships. It could, in a way, as I said, that perfectionism is implicated in OCD, anxiety, eating disorders, depression, etc. So, it can be like powerful in any one of those. So we're going to decide what perfectionism makes you do. Now, what gets measured gets managed. So we're going to keep a diary and start paying attention. We're going to write down what happens and its consequences. So we're going to investigate this process so we deeply understand how perfectionism is working and what it's doing to us. Then we're going to bring an observing eye to the process. So we're going to start monitoring and starting to think about becoming aware, consciously aware of when the process of perfectionism kicks in. Then we're going to learn a little bit more about how perfectionism controls you, about cognitive biases, negative thinking processes, and this imposter feeling, this feeling of fraud, and why it is that, in fairness, why you even have this failure button that you can go to sometimes. We're going to do some behavioral experiments, it's called, that's the CBT, that's the B in cognitive behavior therapy. I don't do many of them, but we're going to do some behavioral experiments which will test out what is fact and what is fiction. So a common belief for people who are perfectionists is that if I do less, I will look like a failure. I will fail. People think I'm lazy. So you can see that's if I do a little bit less, people will think I'm lazy. Okay, that's is that a fact or is it a fiction? Is it a belief or a fact? It's actually a belief, right? And if we tackle these, we've got to find them. But if we tackle these little pervasive beliefs that are so kind of strong, we'll be able to modify those. We're going to go from rigid, faulty thinking to flexible thinking? Does anyone know the answer to this? And I say this, I must have said it to some of you a number of times, right? What is the only tree left standing on the beach after a tidal wave has gone through a tropical beach? What's the tree that's left standing on the beach after a tidal wave? Does anyone remember? Anyone? What's the tree left standing on the beach after a tidal wave has gone through? I think the response time is a bit. I can't leave you hanging on that long. Anyone? It is a palm tree. Ah, well done, Tracy. Oh, I think we were just even. It's a palm. Yeah, well done, Amy. I must have said this to Amy at some point. Palm tree, yeah. Why? Well, if an oak tree was on the beach and a tidal wave came through, what would happen? An oak tree is rigid. An oak tree is not meant for the tropics. An oak tree would get swept away, no problem. But a palm tree is flexible. It has leaves at the tops, no branches. It's got a round trunk. It's perfectly suited to the environment. And we want you to become palm trees so that you flow with stress. You don't kind of hold it and try to keep it off, right? This is what causes burnout. So we want to become flexible and less rigid. And also, and this is an interesting one, we want to learn to focus on the positive and not the negative. Most people who procrastinate, and in fairness, a lot of people who have problems with anxiety and depression tend to focus on the negative and ignore the positive. Now, if you're familiar with my mental slideshow exercise, which you'll find in Anxiety Wizard, I get you to bring up 4 memories, the good memories, powerful memories of things that made you feel good, you succeeded, you felt good about yourself, you felt that you're on top of things, you felt competent, you performed well. So genuine memories. And I tell you what, it's like pulling teeth trying to get someone to remember something good about themselves. Once you get into it, though, I have to say, it takes often it takes the full hour session to pull out 4 memories and structure the homework, right? Because we're so used to forgetting positive things and just thinking of negative things. The thing is, most of the negative things that you think about are fantasies. So when I set up the mental slideshow, you'll find this in Anxiety Wizard, Pictures That Make Panic. When I set up the mental slideshow, we're creating 4 memories of good things that happened to you. And we're actively remembering them, as opposed to remembering all of the fantasy memories you have of things that never happened and things that didn't go wrong and disasters that you avoided because it didn't happen and catastrophes that never occurred, right? And it's a powerful tool because thinking about the positive is actually often just a bit more accurate than thinking about the negative. We're going to change your thinking style. Now, we're going to try to make your thinking style a little bit more process oriented and a little bit less content driven, but we're going to stop using shoulds. We're going to stop overgeneralizing. We're going to stop the black and white thinking, the P and the F, okay? And the final thing we're going to do is we're going to stop procrastinating. I'll show you how to do that. And of course, procrastination is based on a fear of failure, so you don't do it so you don't fail. But in the end, the fear of not doing it is greater than the fear of failure. So you do it, but then you never give it your best shot because it's time rushed. So it's just a useless strategy. So we're going to overcome procrastination. Now, this is going to be a big new module in Anxiety Wizard, and I'll be developing this over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But you can't do it all at once anyway, because there'll be homeworks and you'll need to just practice with stuff. So I hope that sounds like it's a good idea. Do you think it's a good idea that we put in a whole module on overcoming perfectionism in Anxiety Wizard? Does that sound like a good thing? Anyone? There's a lag. I've got lots of palm trees now. Now, I'm embarrassed to say that my diary was wrong last week, because my diary said yes last week, or this Monday gone was a bank holiday. Of course, it wasn't because of VE Day. So this Friday is a bank holiday. So tomorrow is a bank holiday. So I put the bank holiday offer out last week, where if you joined Anxiety Wizard, thanks, Julie. Senga, yeah. If you joined Anxiety Wizard, you got the Stop Overthinking 7 challenge free. And quite a few people, some people took me up on that. That's good. The thing is, it wasn't it wasn't the bank holiday. So what I'll do is, if anyone wants to join Anxiety Wizard, if you're not already a member, join Anxiety Wizard this weekend. I will give you free the Stop Overthinking challenge, and that will be put into your library. When you join Anxiety Wizard, and then after that, I've actually already taken it out from the offer, but I'll put it back in the offer in a minute, and then that's yours, and you get to keep it as long as you stay subscribed. And also, you'll find the new module on overcoming perfectionism. I'll be developing it over the weekend and next week, and so you can start to work on overcoming perfectionism. And I'll probably make it an open module, which means it'll be available to you immediately you join Anxiety Wizard. So I think I've thought a little bit more about perfectionism since I've been doing this talk and whatnot. And I think if we really put some effort into overcoming perfectionism, it will make every area of our experience better, and it will improve our mental health generally, and it'll make tackling anxiety and depression just so much easier because it's something I see in almost everybody. It has to be something that we've got to deal with, otherwise it just sort of carries on. So I will put the Stop Overthinking 7-Day Challenge into the Anxiety Wizard bundle. If you join this weekend, you'll get that free of charge, and you get to take that and use that and work through it. And I hope that you do that, and people are enjoying the experience of doing it. And look out for the Overcoming Perfectionism in Anxiety Wizard. It'll appear over the weekend. I think I'll be able to start it and get it moving, and then that will get you going on really tackling this pervasive and really damaging problem. So that's me, 31 minutes, 32 minutes. Thank you for taking the time. I'll probably say good night now. And next week, I shall do another Facebook Live, as long as you want to have me do a Facebook Live, as long as you come on and join me. And I'm open to suggestions. It was Amy and Tracy and a few others that suggested perfectionism, but I'm open to suggestions for the topic for next week. So not email, but put it in the suggestions box on the Facebook group and page, etc., and I'll look at it and we'll decide what to do. So Michelle, where can you find Anxiety Wizard? I shall put the link in the group in 5 minutes time, if that's all right. But failing that, just go to drpurvis.online, and it's right there on the front page. drpurvis.online, Anxiety Wizard. But just give me 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll make sure that you get the Stop Overthinking 7-Day Challenge at the same time, to save me having to give it to you afterwards. So, okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.